Everyone, welcome to this webinar on mindfulness, the effects on the brain and relationships. My name is Angie Chew, and I'm delighted to be with you for the next 1 hour on this webinar. I'm going to now share my slides to help make the session clearer for everybody. So let's start with knowing a little bit about the brain. The brain is a complex organ in our body, and it really controls and ensures that everything, all the organs in our body are working in a way that they synchronize with each other. There's also the parts of the brain that helps us to be able to interpret what the eyes are seeing, what the ears are hearing, how we put the words together, and what we're thinking. The three parts of the brain that I'm going to share or talk about today would be the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. So I'll start with the hippocampus because it's not such a main feature in our talk, but since it's highlighted there, and thank you to the people who created this image, which I have been able to obtain for the use of this webinar. So the hippocampus is where the memory is, especially the long-term memory. And what it's stored there basically has also an effect on how we conduct ourselves, because certain memories which have an emotional imprint may affect how we react or even how we interact with certain people, especially if we had unpleasant encounters previously. And if we have been traumatized, this memory would also be stored in the hippocampus with an emotional imprint. And this can also cause us to have anxiety, certain phobias, or certain overreaction when a similar situation arises. Now, the prefrontal cortex is a really important part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that is in charge of how we learn, how we make decisions. It's a very rational part of the brain. And it's also a new part of the brain. So if you compare our brain, how it looks now to a human brain that was, say, a few 100,000 years ago, they did not have such a large prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex in a human brain is also the largest compared to all the other mammals in the animal kingdom. And that also explains why humans are especially intelligent. Looking back at my own life, the last 40 years of technological transformation and innovation has been mind-boggling. Yeah, using a phone that was basically was a dial to the first generation of mobile phones that was as big as a chunk of plastic, and now it's just so small, and the amazing things that we can do with the phone. So this is just an example of one of the many technological advancements that we have experienced in the world. It's also the new kid in the block compared to the amygdala, which is the old brain. And this is also the part of the brain that helps us to survive, to stay alert to any dangers. And sometimes they're not real dangers. We imagine the danger. We imagine things going wrong, and this will also trigger the amygdala. So once the amygdala is triggered, it actually causes a chain of events to happen. It sends a message to the hypothalamus, which then triggers the pituitary gland that pumps adrenaline. And as we all know, adrenaline is responsible for our increase in heart rate. Our heart starts pumping faster because it's going to send much of the blood into our muscles. This also explains why we tend to be more aggressive when we are feeling threatened. And when we are feeling threatened, we are also now feeling more tension in the shoulders. That's why if you are at work and you come home and feeling like your shoulders are really tight and painful at times, it's because you may have been experiencing either real threats or imagined threats while you were working. You may feel the tightening in the chest. In the legs, you may notice it if you are much aware, but for most people, because they do walk around, that energy there that gets expended. But chances are you did not hit anyone, so that energy there just gets trapped in the shoulders and sometimes the neck. So I'd like you to just rotate your head now and just sense, how is your neck? Is it relaxed? Is it tight? Is there any pain when you rotate your head? That helps you to know how tense you are in the upper body. And now slowly just rotate your shoulders. Notice how easy or tight it is when you rotate it. How easy it is to just move those shoulders, or difficult. Rotate the other direction. Yeah. So let's make this a little bit interactive, right? Rather than just hearing me for the whole time, you are able to also do some things to realize for yourself what is going on with your body. If you have been hearing anything that is threatening in nature, or someone aggravated you, you may still feel your chest a little bit tight and your heart is still beating a bit fast. So at this moment, just take 3 deep breaths. Nice and slow. Take a deep breath. Feel the air going through your lungs. Feel the air going through your nostrils. And every out breath relaxes your body a little bit more. How does that feel? So whenever you feel agitated or aggravated, do 3 deep breaths. It helps you to anchor. And what it also helps you is to stop the amygdala hijack. Okay, what does that mean, the amygdala hijack? See, when your amygdala is activated, your body actually feels tight, and that is what we call stress. You're being stressed. That means you're being threatened in a way, yeah? And the amygdala causes you to be a bit more hyperactive, and there is a greater amount of fear. So you may have heard the term fight or flight. If we can't run away from something, then we tend to fight. And sometimes when we get shouted at, we freeze. And teachers use that a lot in the classroom. When the students are not paying attention, sometimes they'll say, "Quiet!" And then the students will freeze for a few moments. So the amygdala is activated whenever it hears a sound as well that is alarming in nature. And it can also be activated by someone sounding aggressive or domineering. So I hope this helps you to also realize that we have great abilities in activating somebody else's amygdala as well. Now, when your brain is calm, which is the other picture here on the other side, is that when the amygdala is not activated, it will be relaxed. You will feel calm and you actually experience more happiness. Notice when you hang out with someone that you don't feel threatened and you feel you can trust, you can be more relaxed. But if you are going out for a meal or have a drink with someone that you don't know if anything you say might actually be used against you, or this person has an alternative motive, then you tend to be a bit stressed. You're not as relaxed. There's a bit of fear. So what happens with someone who is angry, in fear, who feel hateful, disgusted, or frustrated? The amygdala is enlarged and even enhanced. It's taking over the prefrontal cortex functions. That means the prefrontal cortex actually takes a backseat. The amygdala takes charge. And this is when we use the term amygdala hijack. So when you use those 3 deep breaths and just pause and breathe and bring the mind to focus on the breathing, helps you to stop the narratives that usually starts to happen when you're upset or angry or frustrated or in fear. So when we are not feeling threatened, we're on low emotion, our prefrontal cortex is in charge. Now, you may say, how come love also causes you not to have very good prefrontal cortex functions? We're talking about like when you're falling in love. Do you notice when you're falling in love, your judgment is not very good? You are very positively biased. You usually can't see any of the shortcomings or weaknesses of the person when you're in love. And so it's a very animalistic function, right? Because you're looking for someone to partner with, and usually it has to do with procreation. So what you're looking out for, you get excited about. It's not quite the same when you are actually assessing the person for long-term stability in relationship. The intellectual and emotional compatibility. So because we're not like the other animals, after procreation, the male moves on and then the female looks after the young, and then the young just leaves once they become independent. Among humans, the relationship is very long term. So in some countries where there's arranged marriages, it is said that the arranged marriages last longer because parents can be more objective than the person himself or herself falling in love. So something for you to think about, yeah? So how does meditation play a part, or mindfulness play a part in this? So meditation is an activity that is mind strengthening. Mindfulness, it's really about awareness, being present, seeing things as they are in terms of being judgmental. Because being judgmental causes us usually to be negative bias or sometimes positively biased, and thus disabling us from making good decisions. There are many forms of meditation. It's not just sitting like that picture up there with the lady cross-legged, which usually people do in yoga. You can sit on the chair. You can sit on a bench. You can sit on a couch. You can sit with your back leaning against the back of the seat. You can do walking meditation. You can lie down. We usually teach body scan meditation, and even using a phrase. Using a positive phrase like, may I be well and happy. May I be kind and gentle. May you be well and happy. May you be healthy and peaceful. So these are phrases that you can, in fact, create yourself. Phrases that would inspire you, that would make you feel calm. And you can use different words at different times when you are doing a meditation practice. So mindfulness can retrain your mind, therefore making your mind feeling more at ease, making your mind feel safe or safer, making your mind feel relaxed and happy. And it can change the brain. So the next few slides are with the permission of Dr. Sarah Lazar, who is with the Harvard Medical School, and she does a lot of research on mindfulness. And you would see here, this part here, if you can see my cursor moving, it's the prefrontal cortex. And this part here is the insula, which is the part of the brain that detects the heart rate increasing, the breathing becoming more rapid. So in mindfulness practitioners, the insula being enhanced enables the person to become much more aware when he or she is experiencing discomfort in the body, as well as the emotion of fear or frustration, anger. And this enables then the person to do earlier intervention, to release the brain from the amygdala hijack. so that we can be more grounded and more centered in order to have a conversation that's not going to get heated up or becoming sometimes irrational, leading to no good outcomes. So the brain scan actually showed that the prefrontal cortex thickened in people who do regular mindfulness practices. The working memory is where what the prefrontal cortex is also responsible for. The ability to remember things well, the executive function, and also the fluid intelligence. So this part of the brain is really important. This is also the part of the brain that your company pays you every month to use, not your amygdala. Yeah. So if you're using your amygdala more at work, then maybe you're shortchanging the company. The amygdala, as a result of regular mindfulness practice, becomes less active. And this is consistent with decreased arousal and sense of well-being. So there are some people who are actually born with a nature that is softer, more gentle, and you will guess right that the amygdala is less active, also less enlarged. Someone may be born that way, but if they're in an environment that they are constantly or regularly being threatened, shouted at, beaten, then the amygdala would become more enhanced. And people with certain mental illnesses have amygdala which is enlarged. So someone who is autistic, for example, based on the book called Altered Traits by Richard Davidson, who does research at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, actually through his research, it was found that the amygdala is more enlarged. And in people with who are autistic are especially sensitive to the fluttering of the eyelashes. So you would notice that they tend not to look you in the eyes. So please don't force them to look you in the eyes, because it actually activates the amygdala, which causes then the body to tighten up. So they actually don't feel comfortable and they become tense, stressed. So how does this all affect relationships? Now, our relationships are varied, and there are many different people in our world, whether there's a loved one, whether it's family, whether it's in-laws, whether it's child and parent, or just friends, and also at work. So relationships at work also need to be managed, because if your relationships at work are not great, then you would unlikely look forward to go to work in the morning. You probably dread going to work if you feel that you're feeling out of place, people don't like you, or you don't like the people, you don't really have people that you can really talk to, you feel that you always have to put on a mask or act, or these people are acting, or whatever that is. So when you have such negative observations or judgments, then chances are you're not going to look forward to going to work. So it's therefore important for us to know how to build good relationships at work. So how does mindfulness play a part? One is to be aware that there are always assumptions made. You make assumptions too. You usually don't know people very well when you first meet them, or even after a few times, because you don't actually sit down with them and get to know the person. So one of the best ways to either affirm your assumptions or have the assumptions that are negative in nature to be dispelled, or to understand the person better, is to have a meal or a cup of coffee and just talk as two humans who are coming together to do a job in the organization, to be of service. And therefore, understand each other helps us to get rid of assumptions that are not correct. And also then to know the other person, what makes him or her tick, and what's really important to that person. And sometimes, what are their stories that make them the way they are? Get to know the people. Invest time in doing that to build good relationships at work. And this also applies to building good relationships with people that you are living with, instead of assuming you know them, because people change. Haven't you changed over the years from being a 15-year-old, how you were then, to what you are now? And to understand how certain bias comes about, we all have bias, positively biased or negatively biased, is to be aware of that. Because mindfulness is being aware so we can put the bias aside. So when we actually look at something or assess something, we focus on the issues and the facts, instead of the bias causing us to throw out the facts and create our own narrative. Everyone does this. So the more we are able to put aside assumptions and bias and deal with the facts in the present moment, we can become much more effective. And also to be professional. When we look at someone and say, oh, that person is very professional, it means that he or she doesn't let her bias and emotions get in the way. So I would also say to some of the people that I train, be a professional spouse instead of being an emotional spouse. Emotional spouses are really hard to live with. Be a professional mother. Be a professional father. Be a professional son. Be a professional daughter. And that way you don't have all these hang-ups and things from the past affecting you in the present moment. And your relationships can't move forward because it's always stuck with all the biasness that came from the past, which came from past experience. So let's have a look here. When we are relaxed and we're happy, sharing a moment together, like sharing an umbrella together, which part of your brain is actually in charge? Yeah, the cortex, the prefrontal cortex. You're able to have a good conversation. You're able to hang out together, be at ease with each other. But if there's a lot of shouting, a lot of stress and anger, then your prefrontal cortex is disabled. Your amygdala takes charge and you're basically hijacked. And that's why when the conversation becomes emotional, a lot of times people forgot even what or how it started. And when people get angry, they start to pull in things from the past, and then sometimes even pull in the mother, the father, things that have happened has got nothing to do with the issue at hand. Because the amygdala is all about wanting to hurt back. So it's really dangerous to let the amygdala take charge. And it's also very unpredictable and unpleasant when we are engaging people whose amygdala is usually easily triggered. We usually call these people very sensitive people. Siu hei, if you know the word in Cantonese. So you would by now be able to summarize that it is stressful to be hearing angry or negative comments. Remember the last time you heard someone saying negative words to you? Our body kind of like just cringes, or hearing complaints day in, day out. So some of the people I counsel comes to me and said, my mother complains every day to me. And it's very tiring, it's draining. So mothers out there, please don't complain to your children. You are just stressing them, especially when they've just come back from a day of work or having gone to school. Because you're not just venting. Because very often you don't just vent to your kid, then you go and vent to someone else and then vent again to another person, and you're just stressing all these people around you. Seek a professional to help you, to listen to you, to help you see different perspectives so that you can start changing the way you respond. That would be a better long-term approach rather than just venting. And it's stressful to be hearing threatening words. So if you have someone in your life, whether it's your children, your spouse, or even at work, it's not to use threatening words. Because even if you say it jokingly, it sticks. It sticks because the brain is such that it has a Velcro to anything that's negative. You may think you're joking, but the brain doesn't. And it remembers it because it might just be true and just said jokingly. So the mind creates different narratives and it causes the person to have insecurity. So if you don't really mean something, don't say it, especially when it's not pleasant. And the reason is it disables the prefrontal cortex and engages the amygdala. A relaxed mind is a receptive mind. So if you know how to be relaxed, you are also a contagion of being relaxed. So whoever is with you becomes more relaxed too. If you're uptight, you would tend to cause other people to feel uptight. That's how powerful you are as a person, that you are able to cause someone else to feel like yourself. So when we are using words that are assuring, encouraging, and motivating, then we are also engaging the other person's prefrontal cortex. And that way, the conversation can be much more productive, much more pleasant as well. And therefore, you have a happier conversation. So in mindfulness, we teach or promote these foundational attitudes. I will share a few with you. Some of the courses, we have 9 foundational attitudes. I'm not going to touch all of them, but some of the key ones that you can start considering at this point in life, even though you may not have or been taking the course. Because attitude, as you would agree, is everything. When you're hiring someone, wouldn't you want to hire a positive attitude person? Someone with good attitude? Wouldn't you want to marry someone who has a positive attitude in life? So what about us? Are we someone who has a positive attitude? Who has a kind attitude? A good attitude? Or are we the one who is with the bad attitude and therefore adding negativity to the relationships and to wherever we go? So let's have a look at some of the mindfulness foundation attitudes that we teach and promote. One of them is compassion. Sometimes we lack compassion when we are so stuck in how we think and judge others. We forget that the other people are also people with feelings, with a heart and a mind just like ours. We can be so judgmental when someone is different from us, whether it's in organization, a different department, a different color, different race, different family. If we develop compassion, we're able to see other people as humans who also have feelings, who also have insecurities, who also wants to be cared for. When we develop this compassion mind, we would tend to be more caring and less judgmental. We would also tend to share credits, share the gifts that we have in life, instead of being self-centered. When we're non-judgmental, which is another attitude that, as you've been hearing quite a lot, even in this webinar, is it enables us to be open-minded people that do not impose our beliefs on others, that we respect other people's belief. that we accept all life's perspectives and realities and to do their own thing in peace. And this is really important, especially when we are a parent. When we become parents, we want the best for our children. We tend to want to protect them. But it doesn't help the relationship when we keep imposing and trying to stop them from making mistakes or reducing their risk. They will feel suffocated and they will rebel. Because when we do that, we stress them, their amygdala takes charge and they no longer want to hear, and they're definitely not listening now with their prefrontal cortex. They will just shut. They either flight, close the door, go into their room, or they fight, they argue back, and then it becomes so painful for both parties. The third foundational attitude I like to promote here is gratitude. Gratitude is extremely powerful because when we're angry at someone, we tend to forget about all the wonderful things that the person has done for us. And then we become so hurtful when we say words that are very sharp and nasty. But if we develop gratitude with the 3 deep breaths grounding us and our mind is grateful, we stop. We're able to bring back the memories of how this person has helped us, has given us opportunities, has been kind to us. And yes, in this very moment, we don't agree. And to accept we don't agree. It's okay. We don't have to agree on everything just because we are related, or just because we're friends, or just because we work together. And gratitude helps us to remember how people have had to coach us, helped us, trained us for us to be successful. As much of the blessings that we have in life today, it's because of the kindness of the people around us. Acceptance in this case, is knowing that everybody's different shapes, different colors, different preferences. They have different belief systems. They have different quirks. They have different mindsets. If we can accept that, it's liberating. And also accept that we can't always have things our way. And we can accept that not everyone's going to agree with us. And we can accept that things are not going as planned. So this acceptance helps us to move along with the time and being present instead of hanging on to expectations. Which brings us to the next foundational attitude of letting go. Letting go of the past. Something has really happened, it has happened. To be able to accept, and then we can let go. To be able to let go of control and trust other people. To be able to forgive. That's part of letting go too. Because otherwise we hold that pain in our heart, because what we're not letting go is actually the thoughts, the memories, the judgments that go with what happened. When we let go of the judgment, that process of forgiveness starts to take place. So I'd like to share a few or spend a few moments talking about speech. Do you agree that happy relationships are a result of mindful speech? When are the times when you were not very mindful and you said something and offended somebody? And I recall when I was young, I was very candid. I was very brutally honest, and that wasn't helpful. But I learned that from my dad. He was brutally honest. But it took me many years to realize that it doesn't pay to be brutally honest, even when someone says, I like your opinion. So when I came across mindful speech and I started to practice and apply mindful speech, it changed my life because it changed my relationships. Because the quality of our life has everything to do with the quality of relationships we have. So, what does mindful speech look like? So, instead of just putting the whole chart there and causing you to try to figure things out, I have created this step by step. First, before we speak, check if what you're going to say is true or not true. Sometimes we hear a rumor or some speculation. It's not the truth. Should we repeat it? Maybe not, right? Yeah, so if it's not true, don't say it because we haven't verified unless we are saying as a question. Do you know if this is actually happening? Because I heard it, but I don't know if it's true. Rather than, do you know this is happening? Like saying as a matter of fact, just by changing the tone, it makes a difference. If it's true, check whether is it beneficial to say it or not beneficial. Maybe something is true but not beneficial to say it. If it's not beneficial, don't say it. Yeah? That way, it doesn't hurt someone, it doesn't offend someone, it doesn't cause someone to feel insecure about the situation. If it's beneficial, will the person accept or not accept what we say? Sometimes we have the best advice, the best idea, but it may not be accepted at that point in time. So if it's not accepted, don't say it. Wait for the right time. If that moment is the right time, then say it. Does that make sense? So, sorry, some of you may want to take a picture of this and please feel free to do so. I have summarized it into 4 guidelines. Number 1, is it true? Check. If it's true, is it beneficial? Check. If it's beneficial, then is this the right time and place? Check. If it's any time any of these questions is a no, don't say it. And if you're going to say it, use the right words and tone. An example, you come home and you're not sure if the clothes have been washed. You can ask, have the clothes been washed? As opposed to, have the clothes been washed? Same words, different tone. Which one would you prefer if you were asked the question? The one that sounds, have the clothes been washed? Or have the clothes been washed? Yeah? You know it. So therefore, we need to pay attention to the tone of voice that we use. So the unfortunate thing is when people are dating, they are very mindful with their speech. Because if not, chances are you're not going to end up getting married, right? Because that person would not want to marry somebody who is bossing the person around. But what about after marriage? Can you continue to treat that person as your boyfriend or girlfriend so that you will be mindful with your speech and therefore your relationship from being a couple before marriage to become a couple after marriage stays almost the same because you're not dictating or bossing each other around. And that takes awareness, compassion, gratitude. So often I hear people say, yeah, I don't need my spouse, I got children already. If we have that kind of attitude, chances are your spouse will feel it in the way you speak to the spouse. because the attitude is there. And sometimes I hear couples calling each other daddy, and the husband calls her mommy. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. He's not your dad, he's your husband. She's not your mom, she's your children's mom, not your mom. So don't call her mom, otherwise she will start becoming like your mother. So call each other darling, sweetheart, dear. One of those terms of endearment, but not mommy or daddy. How many of you do that? Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Okay. So I hope so far you are finding this useful. So now let me move on to the next thing. Applying mindful speech. If I had learned this when I joined one of the companies that asked me for my opinion of how the seminar went, and I made a comment about the colors of the decor because it was really grayish. And I thought, if this is a nice seminar room to help people feel uplifted, the color scheme is not great. I wasn't very smart then. I didn't know how to be mindful. I wasn't mindful. So I gave my opinion. And the guy who was responsible for choosing the color scheme held that against me for the rest of my term in the organization. And he really waited for opportunities to stab me on the back. I didn't know I offended him. I didn't even know he made the decision on the color scheme. So, what I have learned from many years of being in the corporate world and also being in families, if I have nothing nice to say, nothing complimentary to say, maybe better not to say it. Or put forth in a positive way. Instead of saying, I think the color scheme looks a bit dreadful, is to say, oh, maybe we can brighten up this place a little bit more by adding some paintings or increasing the lighting. So when I counsel people, I also find that people tend to get their minds stuck with the negativities and wanting to fight the system. You're not going to win the system. Instead, focus on how you can make suggestions that are helpful so people can consider from your point of view or the people at your level what could work better. But if we were to make statements like, the system doesn't care about people, how does that help? What if we can say, perhaps we can consider how we can schedule the staff so that everybody is fairly treated and make a suggestion on how to do that would probably be more helpful. So if you have something that you like to motivate your child to change or someone to change, is to put forth in a positive way, positive speech, rather than making a negative remark. So I'd like to suggest to you some tips on how you can maneuver when conversation gets difficult. One is change the subject. Don't keep going on with the subject when you're starting to feel difficult or uncomfortable or people are getting a little bit heated up. Change the subject. Another one is don't further comment after 2 rounds when there is no alignment in thinking. That means you share something and the person comes back and disagrees with you, and then you share something else and that person disagrees with you again. You know what? Just pause. Just move on to something else. Don't further comment on it because it is very apparent that the person is conversing with her or his amygdala. He or she just wants you to also agree. It's not interested in hearing your comments or inputs. Move on. It's okay not to be right. Really, we don't have to be right all the time. It's really okay. And fourth, remember that harmony and joy are more important. Not about being right. If somebody feels like he or she is winning the argument, so be it. It's probably inconsequential. So last week, if you attended, I was sharing that I went on this cruise with my cousin, and I had many, many opportunities to practice all the 4 tips that I shared with you earlier on in the previous slide. When we're together so much and we have conversations, there will always be topics that we don't agree on. So I would then say, hey, look at that. That's very interesting, isn't it? Change the topic. Right? Another one is, okay, we can agree to disagree. And that's a really good one too. Okay? So mindfulness can help us, in summary, change our brain. It also reduces our blood pressure when we're not so frustrated and angry all the time. Reduce our cortisol level, thus reducing our emotional pain as well, and improving our health. And this was the empirical study that I shared with you last week when I couldn't find the table, showing that over 70% of our participants who took our Mindful Compassion course, that their stress hormones reduce because they changed the way they interacted with their loved ones and with people at work. Harvard study shows the reduction in blood pressure. Cortisol level that was also reduced with this group of medical students as part of the study. Using mindfulness to cope with pain, and this is in Mayo Clinic Health System website. So we collaborate with big names like Oxford, Harvard, Brown in order to bring you more programs. And I hope that you will take advantage of these programs. The next speaker is Ron Siegel, but we also have Dr. Lillian Chung coming from Harvard School of Public Health to talk about mindful eating. So you can find all this at our website and a retreat that's going to be in Phuket. Mindfulness courses. So get updated on our Facebook page, our website, and I do have a personal Facebook page as well that you can come and read some of the sharings that I put up there.